But when it is about exports, people are like, humse na ho payega.
Right.
And day one, they'll start getting orders in bulk, like thousands of orders every day. So, any advice for these daydreamers?
But I think what is important for anybody to be successful, to have meaningful success, one very important behavioral aspect is
What are the different compliances that are required for an exporter, and how Amazon as well as CAs can help in this process? Which are certain product categories that are being sold more on Amazon?
successful sellers are those that are able to do that very well. They have to create a separate category name for Shilajit.
Oh my God, okay.
Right? So that's one area that continues to do well. Apparel is one area that continues to do well. Don't get carried away with the demand numbers, because as a customer on Amazon, when you actually go on Amazon, we know that things are surfaced to us, that basis your shopping history, basis your interest. If you look at the .com market, सब कुछ बिकता है यार.
Hey folks, CA Rachana Ranade here. Today I'm here for a very, very special episode. Just few days ago, I uploaded this reel on my Instagram handle, which was focusing on how businessmen can expand their businesses globally by using e-commerce as a crucial platform. And on that same reel, I got so many questions, something like, what is being sold on e-commerce platform, like which is the highest selling category? People wanted to understand which are the products that are being sold in bigger volumes. People wanted to understand which are the upcoming opportunities, especially in the 3 to year time frame. Some also wanted to understand the impact of tariffs on Indian exports. And then I thought, rather than me making some follow-up reel, let's do a deep dive video on this. But I'll be honest, I am not an expert in e-commerce platforms. So I just thought I should request someone to help us, to guide us in this whole space. And exactly for that, we have Mr. Ranade with us. He has a total experience of 17 years, and I'm sure his insights are going to be extremely important for us. So first of all, thank you, Ranade, for joining in.
Thank you for speaking with me.
I'm going to focus more on questions that my audiences had on the reel. So first things first, people were not really sure on how can they get ready with their mindset. When it's about exports, people feel that it's extremely capital intensive. They'll need a lot of contacts abroad. So they are doing business in India right now. They are pretty much famous even at local level. Some are doing interstate sale as well. But when it is about exports, people are like, humse na ho payega. Okay, so how does Amazon global selling help people to scale up their business abroad?
Yeah, I mean,
How should they do that key mindset, basically?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think that is one of the perhaps most revolutionary aspect of e-commerce exports, that it has sort of democratized exports in a way. And you're absolutely right when you said earlier that earlier when you used to talk about exports, it was there were certain images that would come up in your mind. Large containers, right? Or a lot of capital is needed, or that you really need a lot of contacts, or you need to keep going to those trade fairs, keep making those contacts, and you spend a lot of time on that. And then maybe once you do that for 4 or 5 years, perhaps you'll get an order, right? And even then success is not assured. But with e-commerce exports, what has happened is that, and particularly with Amazon, you take .com for example, in a manner of speaking, a ready-made set of customers that is already available for you, right? So what this does is that this entire thing of searching for clients, searching for customers, all of that is now out of the window. That is an effort now that Amazon is going to do for you, that we are going to give you reach to a lot of marketplaces, right? You can sell on .com in Europe, what have you, right? Secondly, the investment thing that you spoke about, and I think that's a very important thing, right? Particularly when you're talking about B2B customers, B2B transactions, for all the right reasons, there is a certain MOQ that is expected, right? Certain minimum order quantity that is expected, right? That is not there in e-commerce exports, right? You can start with very minimal investment, right? Because you're finally selling to the end customer, right? So in a manner of speaking, we have sort of eased the access to customers, and in one shot, you have access to millions of customers, worldwide. There is no minimum order quantity that is required. You do not need great investments to begin with. And there is help that is available at every step of the way, be it about compliance, be it about registration, on the platform, and so on and so forth. There is help that is available at every step of the way. And we are trying to simplify things, we are trying to demystify things, right? So in a sense, I think that's what e-commerce exports in general has done for this sector. And Amazon in particular, Amazon global selling in particular, what we've been trying to do is trying to make this, demystify this entire process, trying to make this as simple as possible, and ensuring that right from the get-go, right from day one, you have access to millions of customers worldwide.
All right. I mean, you did talk about how Amazon is helping the sellers to have a nice mindset about selling. Right. But while you were speaking, you said that Amazon itself provides with a lot of customers through your platform.
Right.
There'll be a lot of people, I tell you, who feel that they will open an account.
Right.
And day one, they'll start getting orders in bulk, like thousands of orders every day. So any advice for these daydreamers?
Actually, I'm sure these questions will not be limited to people from your audience, right? This is a question that I keep getting asked every day.
Oh.
Right? That, okay, great, millions of customers, hundreds of billions of dollars of, business that happens on, Amazon every day. And, I have started listing and, where is my sale, right? Now, what we have observed, over a period of time is that, and, we'll talk about it in a little more detail also, but, one of the very important behavioral aspect for successful sellers to stay successful is actually patience.
Well said.
Right? People expect that, you're right, a lot of people expect that from day one, I'll start getting sales, right? But it's not only Amazon. I don't think any business works that way, right? You got to build certain credibility, right? There is obviously a lot of competition on the platform. There are millions of sellers, right? Of course, there are hundreds of millions of customers as well, but there are millions of sellers also. There is competition. So your product needs to be of the right quality. It needs to appeal to the customer. Then, over a period of time, the distraction that is created. So essentially, you need to be patient, right? And what we have seen is that you have to be patient for at least 6 to 9 months.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay.
That is when you'll actually start seeing some meaningful traction, right? So this is an advice that I keep giving to a lot of prospective sellers, that if you're not willing to wait, then you're not very serious about this business, right? And come back when you're serious about this business, because we are not going anywhere, right? We're around. Amazon Global Selling has been around for 10 years. We'll be around for 100 more, right? So we are not going anywhere. But I think what is important for anybody to be successful, to have meaningful success, one very important behavioral aspect is hold your horses, stay patient, give it at least 6 to 9 months, right? Miracles don't happen in a day.
Yeah, absolutely. So very well said. And like you absolutely rightly pointed out, it's not only for exports, right? It'll be for every business. It'll be even for a content creator. It's not going to be like first reel is going to go viral. We'll have to have that patience. Cool. So mindset is now ready, ticked off. I will have to have patience. Amazon will help me in the journey. Agreed. But then if I were to really kickstart, I'm sure there'll be an onboarding process. And, I also got some comments which were around the onboarding process, that it's lengthy, it is a little bit tough and all that. So if you can explain a little bit about this onboarding process, how can a person get started and why is this lengthy or complicated?
I think that we just talked about B2B exports, right? And, there is obviously a lot of complication in B2B exports. So I think to begin with, in comparison to that, right, it's obviously, much more, simplified process. Everything is online, there is a self-serve option available that a lot of sellers, you can actually do it, yourself, it's like that. Now, one of the things that also gets mixed up in this is hey, Amazon is asking for a lot of documentation, right? Now, because there are goods that are going outside of the country, and there's going to be inflow of money into the country and so on and so forth. Exports is like that, right? There is obviously certain level of statutory compliances that are needed, that the government asks for instance, hey, what is your IEC code, for example, right? And what is your identity as a person. So I think these are some basic steps that we do, because it is also incumbent upon us that we verify the identity of every person who's coming in, ensuring that there are no bots, ensuring there are no fraud, and so on and so forth. So so just to clarify, it is not only an Amazon process. There are certain statutory compliances that are required, right? Now, having said all of this, I also understand that sometimes you may get stuck. Sometimes it's not necessary. It may be like you may be a great businessman, but sometimes it is not necessary that you are very savvy with this particular process, and that is something that I can totally understand, totally relate to, right? So even there, there is help available from Amazon Global Selling at every step of the way, right? And at regular intervals, what our team does is that we sort of verify, hey, at which stage of this registration process is somebody stuck in, right? And then we sort of give them a call, we give them a nudge, you say that, hey, did you know that this is how you need to do it, and so on and so forth. And at constant intervals, we are also constantly taking this feedback, right, and seeing where to improve our process, how to make it a little more intuitive. So it is a combination of there are certain compliances that are required, right, and ensuring that the right set of sellers are coming in. But having said all of this, there is help that is available at every step of the way, right? And so.
But like you said, there will be a lot of compliances from the government side also, something like an IEC, which is an import-export code, or any other compliances which the government may ask for. Two entities or two types of people, I can say, who can help in this process. One is people at Amazon who can help simplify this. And second, being a chartered accountant, let me also take this opportunity to talk a little bit about CAs who can also help in this compliance process. So if you can just throw a little bit of light on what are the different compliances that are required for an exporter, and how Amazon as well as CAs can help in this process.
I think I'll answer your second CA question first, right? Because interestingly, CAs already actually help in this process for us, right? So we have this what we call as a service provider network, right? These are third-party service providers. They're not affiliated to Amazon in any way. However, we work closely with them. They're vetted by Amazon. In terms of what kind of services they're able to provide, what has their track record been, and so on and so forth, right? So to that extent, this third-party service network that I'm talking about is actually a very important element of what we do, of this entire ecosystem, so to speak. And they continue to provide support to our sellers in terms of compliance, and some of them happen to be CAs as well. So CAs are already helping, your community is already helping. So thank you very much for that, right? And it is also important to understand that there are Amazon as an entity, right, can there are certain things that we can legally advise on, certain things that we cannot legally advise on, right? I mean, we can tell you that these are the compliances that are required, right? However, the way to get those compliances, ensuring that you're actually compliant, etc., is actually incumbent upon the seller, right? And this is where this entire third-party service network comes in, right? In terms of various compliances that are required, of course, there's IEC code that we already talked about, and there are when you're actually sending goods out, from the port, there are certain custom documentation, etc., that is required. There also, we have a set of logistics service providers, right, who actually again help with this entire documentation process for you, right? The third aspect of compliance is, so all of this is the in-country compliance aspect, right? When you register, what do you need? When you're sending goods out, what do you need, right? And when you're getting money in, there is something, that you essentially need, which is typically handled by the banks, and, there is a very set process, around
As to
that.
why the money is coming in India. We
Exactly,
need to
right?
explain the reason.
Because, this is essentially FEMA. And FEMA, among many other things, also governs money laundering, right? So, so that's a very important, aspect of this. So these are the three in-country aspects of this. And the fourth aspect of compliance is the destination market compliance, which is particularly around product compliances, right? For example, you are selling a product that is, maybe you're in the health and personal care category, and you're making certain claims about your product. Then you need to have certain certifications, and this is dictated by the destination marketplace, right? Even here we have a third party service network who actually advises on a lot of these things, right? So while Amazon does not legally there are certain restrictions in terms of what we can tell and what we cannot tell.
So in some cases it will be like a direct help from your side, but wherever, maybe like you said, legally if you're not allowed to do that, then it's like a third party which is
like I can tell you that hey, you're selling a protein powder, for example, right? And in the US marketplace, these are the compliance certificates that are needed, right? However, I cannot provide those certificates for you, right? Or when you're sending your goods out, these are the custom related documents that are required. I can tell you that, but I cannot create those custom documents for you, right? And hence the importance of this third party service provider network, right? And I sincerely hope more CAs actually join this.
Absolutely. One word you spoke right now that immediately caught my attention and got directly registered in my mind, that was about protein powders, as an example that you gave right now. It's January and my New Year resolution, and I'm sure many of the viewers right now have health and fitness as a resolution.
Yeah, maybe that's why I also mentioned it. Yeah.
So, if I were to understand which are certain products or which are certain product categories that are being sold more on Amazon, you can tell us a little bit about that. And essentially, if there is any specific, so I'm not only talking about a category, right? Category plus a specific product, so that people can understand where is actually the demand coming from. And if you can share one or two stories as well.
Absolutely. I'll give you a slightly lengthy answer, so bear with me, because I think that's an important thing to talk about, right? Now, it is important to understand that we will take .com as an example, right? US, because US continues to be our biggest market. Now it is hundreds of billions of dollars, right? And it's still growing, meaningfully. So in terms of what sells, frankly, on the .com marketplace, everything sells, right? However, I think what we have seen is that successful sellers, right, people who continue to do well, continue to grow sustainably and profitably, are people who have figured out the overlap between the supply strengths and the demand strengths, right? Because sometimes it is easy to get carried away by looking at what sells there and not really looking at what your supply strengths are, right? I mean, you can look at anything and say, okay, again, just a very random example, okay, plant cell, right, for example, right? And then just looking at the demand dynamics and not looking at the supply dynamics, right? What are you strong in, and what is the differentiation that you bring in, right? Successful sellers are those that are able to do that very well, right? And the Amazon flywheel is in such a way that and sometimes it appears like magic, right? The Amazon flywheel is a very simple idea, right? I mean, sellers bring selection. Looking at the selection, customers come in. Looking at these customers, more sellers come in. There's more selection. There's more, till the time this becomes a self-propelled, virtuous, constantly accelerating cycle, right? And that is what we see at work here. And what happens at this scale is that once you have millions of customers, hundreds of millions of customers, and keep growing every day, categories keep getting created, right? As long as as long as it is your supply strength and you're bringing some meaningful differentiation there. I'll give you an example of a category. A couple of years ago, Shilajit, right? Which is fairly popular in India. I think we all know about it. But Shilajit was not a very big category on Amazon.com, right? So what had happened was that Indian sellers were actually selling Shilajit in various forms. There's pill and there's this in a way that consumed, in a way that drunk, whatever, in various forms, various innovations, right? And what ended up happening over a period of time, and this is what, around 18 to 24 months, they had to create a separate category name for Shilajit.
Oh my God, okay.
Right? And there are various examples of this, right? And we have a seller in Jaipur, who started off with leather journals, right? Leather journals, right? And he started innovating and saying that he was good at making it. He had the necessary supply. He thought that, okay, how can I innovate more on this, right? And he started coming up with various innovations on that, various small simple innovations, and now that has ended up becoming a big category, right? Then there are the usual suspects anyway, right? That India traditionally has had a lot of export strengths, right? Cotton-based home linen, for example, right? All of your home textiles and stuff like that, cotton-based apparel, right? That is another big area. So there again, people continue to essentially do well, right? So that's one area that continues to do well. Apparel is one area that continues to do well. Educational STEM toys, so that is one area that a lot of our sellers are essentially innovating on.
What is that?
So essentially educational toys for kids, right? So you sort of gamify how do you learn about the solar system, for example, right? And people end up offering that, so that is one area that continues to do well, right? Furniture, specifically carpets, because again that's another strength that essentially India has. And and all of this in the UP Badohi Mirzapur belt, right? Where almost 60 to 65%, if I remember the numbers correctly, of rugs exports outside of rugs exports from India, offline exports, not Amazon, offline exports, around 60 to 65% of that comes from this small belt, Badohi to Mirzapur, right? So so that is one area that is actually doing well, right? So I think what we have seen, what we have learned is that don't get carried away with the demand numbers, because if you look at the .com market, सब कुछ बिकता है यार, right? I mean, it's the US market for a reason. But what is very important is to understand what your supply strengths are, and what is the value add that you are essentially doing on top of that, right? And these are the categories that sellers in these categories essentially continue to do well. Cotton-based home linen, cotton-based apparel. Health and personal care is another area, because India has traditionally Ayurveda and stuff like that traditionally been health conscious in a and also in a ecologically friendly way, right? And so that is the area that our sellers are essentially innovating on. Yeah.
So when you were speaking, I was just trying to correlate few things that you said, like Shilajit as an example, just started selling more. On social media terms, we'll say that is trending right now, correct? So some platforms like Instagram show that this music is trending right now, and everyone will use that same music in their own reels so that those can go viral. Similarly, does Amazon global selling have something like a trending tag, which helps either the sellers to understand that this is being sold more, or the buyers who have just come for a random shopping, they get to know that okay, people are buying this? Just asking out of curiosity.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of what sells and what does not sell, sellers have a lot of tools that that they can essentially use, right? And it is very similar to what you actually described, right? maybe in a slightly more boring way, but very similar to the spirit that hey, these categories is doing well, and stuff like that, right? So sellers obviously have that, because we also believe that they need to know, so that they can essentially continue to innovate, right? And as far as customers are concerned, and as a customer on Amazon, when you actually go on Amazon, we know that things are surfaced to us, that basis your shopping history, basis your interest, right, related products, and so on and so forth, right? But again, I just want to call something out, that successful sellers are the ones who don't necessarily get carried away with trends, right? But they really think deeply about what is the ecosystem that is available, right? Because it's very important to remember that it's a cross border, we may have made it simple, but it's still not easy, right? Because your goods are leaving your country, they're going somewhere else, and so on and so forth. So one of the things that you will always have to optimize for is resilience, right? Because there are going to be cycles, right? You may do well for 12 to 18 months, but what is going to happen in 24 to 36 months, right? So for that, you need to really think deeply about what are your supply chains. Tomorrow, if there's a disruption, how fast can you actually respond, right? Some of these things become essentially important, because all said and done, you are competing with sellers from all over the world, right? It's not as you're competing with only domestic sellers. It itself is a difficult task, right? Now imagine competing with sellers all over the world. So you have to optimize for resilience as well. And optimizing for resilience is essentially about understanding deeply what your supply strengths are, and also understanding that you have to do some value add on top of that. And the examples of categories that I gave you are some of those categories.
Absolutely. So let's say that an exporter did take that leap of faith and decided that, okay, this is the product category that I want to go ahead with. Started selling. Let's say US is his biggest market.
Right.
Now the seller also has one question in his mind, that what if there is a return? What if the customer, for whatever reason, maybe he found it defective or he didn't like it or whatever, he wants to return it. As a seller, I'm sure the person will have a lot of question marks in his or her mind that, oh God, now what happens? Does that product get shipped back to India, or does it stay in the US, or what happens? How does Amazon help in that case?
Yeah, and again, a very common question that we keep getting asked, that यार ये सब ठीक है, पर अगर बिका नहीं तो, या अगर चलो बिक गया ठीक है, बट रिटर्न कर दिया तो क्या, राइट? आई थिंक ना बिकने से ज्यादा रिटर्न का डर रहता है लोगों को.
Sounded like थप्पड़ से डर.
But we have a very elegant solution for that, right? And one of our most important innovations, product/service, I would call it, is FBA, right? Fulfilled by Amazon, right? And when you send your goods to our FCs, so essentially what we are saying is that, okay, you manufacture whatever, and you've decided on a product, you decide on inventory levels, and so on and so forth. All you need to do is send it to our FCs in the US, for example, if you're selling in the US marketplace, and then all our processes will take over from that, because if there is a return, there are certain, just like how it happens in India, right? When it comes back, it is assessed, whether it's defective, whether it's resellable, not resellable, and so on and so forth, right? So once you send it to our FCs, right, you don't really have to worry about handling returns yourself, because once something re-enters India, that is obviously opens its own compliance loop, right? So that is why we keep encouraging our sellers to send goods to our FCs, right? And to sell via Fulfilled by Amazon FBA, as we call it. And this is advantageous not only in terms of returns, right? For example, US, let's talk about US, because that's still the biggest market. US is not it's not a monolith, right? I mean, there are demand patterns, and there are different kinds of customers in different places, Midwest, East, West, and so on and so forth. And demand patterns keep changing, right? Now, as a seller, it is very difficult for you to keep tracking कि हाँ अभी कैलिफोर्निया में ज़्यादा बिकेगा तो वो उधर एफसी में ज़्यादा बेचूंगा, right? So you don't have to worry about any of that. You send it to one FC and we will take care of the rebalance. That हमें लगता है कि वहाँ अगर demand हो रहा है तो so that is where. So we help with a lot of these things. So FCs have a lot of advantages. Once you send it to our FTA, a lot of our normal processes take over. It's almost like it's hands off now. आपने बेच दिया FC को, भेज दिया, and it's sort of send it, forget it sort of.
Absolutely. So essentially you are saying that an exporter need not really worry about all these returns and all that. Amazon will take care with that, fulfilled by Amazon is what you said for FBA. But 3 times I think you mentioned that America is the biggest market, and that can be a big worry, I think, looking at the current geopolitical scenario. Everyone knows about tariffs which are being imposed on not only on India. You name the country, left, right, center. We are seeing this, that tariffs are being imposed. It's a fact, right? So as a seller, as an exporter, how do I navigate that situation?
See, all said and done, tariffs is an uncontrollable. What we call in Amazon as an uncontrollable, right? It is essentially trade diplomacy and so on and so forth. We cannot control it per se. So here are the questions that we ask ourselves, right? And here are the questions, or rather here are the questions that we've been seeing successful serious sellers asking themselves as well, right? The first question to ask is, structurally, is this a good business to be in or not? So is this a structural business? Are the strengths of this business structural, or is it about cyclicality? Right? Okay. So that is a very important differentiation to make. Well, that is perhaps where it could give you some clues. Now, India traditionally has had a lot of export strengths, right? I mean, for decades, for example, the cotton-based home textiles or apparels or rugs, that I spoke about, or even home decor, right? Some of these things, we've had deep strengths in. We've been there for decades. We've been exporting for decades, right? So I do think that some of India's strengths are structural in nature, right? And not really cyclical per se, right? So I think that's the first question to answer. The second question to answer is, what are your controllables? That's an uncontrollable. What are your controllables? And are you doing all your controllables right? Which is, and I don't think those basics have changed, because any business at the end of the day is an exercise in value creation, right? And as long as you're creating that value, as long as you're doing the right things in the right product, are you ensuring that your display page is good enough for the customers? Is it attractive enough? Are you running the right ads, deals, and what have you? And so are you sending the right levels of inventory and all of that, right? So those are the questions that we ask ourselves, that is it structurally, is it a good business to be in? I think the answer to that is a yes. And are we continuing to do all the right things in terms of what Amazon calls as controllable inputs? We are continuing to get better on that, right? And this is what we have seen successful sellers also. This is how successful sellers also think, sellers who are serious about this business, right? And to that extent, I don't think that this is again any different from any other business, right? I mean, think of some uncontrollable disruption, external disruption in any business. You would think about it this way. ये सब ठीक है, but धंधा ठीक है कि नहीं? Base में, right? I think that's the thing. Yeah.
I think you spoke about a very important point right now, which is what is within our control and what is an uncontrollable. Okay. One thing which is in our control is about leveraging technology, right? And everyone is talking about one thing, which is AI or ML, right? So Amazon as a platform, Amazon Global Selling, how are you leveraging all these AI and ML things? For 2 things. Number 1, to scale up the possibilities for the exporters on your platform. And number 2, are you also using that to simplify the processes that the suppliers need to take while selling the products abroad?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And as you rightly point out, the flavor of the day, year, whatever you want to call it, right? And Gen AI obviously is, we do believe as a company that it is revolutionary. And we're looking at various ways of, how to leverage it, right? And I think this is at 3 or 4 levels, that we do. At a very large level, if we talk about, you would have heard of AWS and, our Amazon Bedrock platform, right? Which is our way of ensuring Gen AI access. Like, if you are a developer yourself, right, and you want to develop some applications using AI, so there's a lot of stuff that, AWS and Amazon Bedrock offers, right? The reason why I'm saying that is not only are we trying to leverage it for our seller and customer businesses, we are trying to, in a way, ensure that everybody also has access of, Gen AI, and, they can actually build off, certain infrastructure that we are able to, essentially provide to them, right? So that's at a very large level, which should tell you that, how serious we are about Gen AI, right? And, that we're actually very, very, very focused on it. Now it takes 2 or 3 different forms. One is, from a seller point of view, as you rightly point out, there are a lot of innovations that we're trying to do that, sellers can ask natural language queries, right? Ask it in natural language and, hey, what is the health of my account right now, for example, right? And, it throws up, 4 or 5 things for you saying that, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this, and, correct this, and, so on and so forth. So that is one important area, that we are working on.
So let's say a person is not very tech savvy and doesn't understand how to read the reports and all that.
Yeah, correct.
Still, with the use of AI now,
they can actually, because that's the whole strength of AI, right? I mean, you can ask questions in natural language, right? And even if you're tech savvy and lazy like me, that could, also essentially help you, right? Because it saves you a lot of time, that you don't really have to sift through hundreds of reports and, look at it. Because let's say, for example, somebody is selling apparel, and apparel as a category tends to have a lot of assortment, right? You have so many ASINs and, so on and so forth. So in some of those cases, it really becomes difficult for you to sift through things. So, so that is one seller facing thing that, we are trying to do, in terms of, secondly, how do you simplify listings, right? With that's a very important aspect, right? So these are some of the ways that we're trying to simplify the seller journey. From a customer-facing point of view, I think in India we've already seen Rufus, the shopping assistant, that we essentially have. Again, for shopping comparison, product comparison, and so on and so forth. The fourth way that we are trying to do is that internally, within Amazon, within our teams, let's say within my team, how do I leverage AI, right? How do I build applications for that, right? How do I ensure that we are freeing up people's time on that is spent on tedious tasks, increase their productivity, so that we are all able to focus on what we are here for, which is serving our customers and sellers.
So like you said, right, can one of the use cases be something like this? Now I'm actually visualizing myself as a seller. So if I were to actually start selling a product, I am not really sure on what description should I put for my product. How should the photographs be like? All these things are also, supported by AI, or?
I mean, these are definitely use cases, right? And, as I said, well, I cannot get into the specifics, but, I think the way we look at it is that every part of the seller journey, right? You're starting, what do you need? You are an existing seller, what do you need? Right? And, that is where we are essentially trying to intervene. And, this is a very good use case that you actually talked about.
And is the compliance part also simplified with AI?
Again, as I said, see, what AI can do for you is, what as Amazon you're allowed to do, right? So the one that I spoke about earlier, that, we will advise you on what compliance is needed. Over a period of time, you can actually type in and say that, hey, I want to sell, a health and personal, a beauty product in the US marketplace. What are the certifications that are required? Maybe, so that is one good use case, right? But then again, I just want to reiterate that ensuring that you're compliant is, of course, on the seller.
Absolutely. Now, talking about currently, where does Amazon Global Selling stand and what is your target? I heard that you hit a $20 billion revenue.
$20 billion in cumulative e-commerce exports in 10 years.
Fantastic, fantastic. And I also heard that your target is of $80 billion by 2030.
2030, yes.
What sort of opportunity do you see there? I mean, I'm sure there will be a lot of people, enthusiasts, who would also want to participate in that journey from $20 billion to $80 billion. So where do you see those new opportunities coming from? And ऐसे क्या लगता है आपको that Amazon can make it really happen? What is your roadmap from $20 billion to $80 billion?
आपको एक मज़ेदार ट्रू स्टोरी बताता हूँ मैं, राइट? 10 साल हो गए हमारा शुरुआत हो गए. 2015 में we started. And 2015 में when we started, जैसे अभी in 25 we did the $20 billion in cumulative e-commerce export. That was originally $10 billion. So when it started in 2015, that was actually $10 billion, right? And to be very honest, if you had asked for an Excel sheet at that time, saying that बोल तो रहे हो दिखाओ कैसे होगा, right? The Excel sheet would have been incomplete, right? So what actually ended up happening is that sometime in 21 and 22, right, we were seeing a lot of momentum, and then we realized that yeah, 10 billion तो कम बोल दिया हमने. So let's double it. That's when $20 billion happened. Now the reason why I'm telling you all of this true story is that it's a long-range milestone, right? And I don't think that it is about perfect foresight or perfect mathematics. I think it's about structural conviction, right? And in 10 years, what we have learned is that India has a lot to offer to the world. And secondly, we haven't even started yet, right? Let me give you some figures there. The penetration of e-commerce exports into overall exports, right, is still very low. It's still in the, the 1-2%, right? Because India exports every year around $400 billion and around $430 billion, last year. Of course, not all of that is retailable. Some of that is petrol and engineering goods, etc. But at least, around $150 billion, $200 billion every year, that continues to grow at a CAGR of, 3 to 4%. So to that extent, the penetration is, still very low. Now, 2 lakh sellers, that we keep talking about, and the number still continues to grow at around 30-35%, every year. However, the 2 lakh sellers need to be kept in the context of the, total number of MSMEs that are available in India, which is, millions of MSMEs, that are there, right? So our firm belief, as we say at Amazon, is that, it is still day one. This is one of the this is one thing that I've heard, all of our leaders keep saying this is their favorite quote, that it is still day one, meaning that we're just getting started, right? And some of these categories that I spoke about, right, and in terms of the opportunities that we see, the cotton-based, home textiles, cotton-based apparel, home decor, carpets, all of these areas we haven't even started yet, right? And I think that, these are still going to contribute majorly, going ahead, and still a huge area of opportunity. Another area of opportunity that we see is, India is one of those countries which has a very vibrant D2C ecosystem, right? You have a lot of brands that are coming up and, that are making their mark, in niche areas. Now, one of the things that you observe about a lot of these brands is that while they serve the India marketplace, a lot of their products are also very amenable to, some of the established marketplaces, because when you're constantly innovating, sometimes it ends up happening that you're, slightly ahead of the curve in the domestic marketplace, and, you perhaps are going to find a place in the in one of the established marketplaces, right? And, we do believe, so that is a huge area of opportunity, right? So I don't have an Excel sheet, right, for $80 billion, but, I would say that we have a lot of structural conviction that, and, if you have learned anything in the last 10 years, 2 things. One, we have a lot to offer to the world, and it is still day one.
Amazing. Like you said, it is still day one. I read this somewhere that in a business like a person's life, there are 3 stages. A business crawls, a business learns how to walk, and the business sprints. So if you're saying day 1, we are still at the crawl phase right now.
Yeah.
How do we reach that sprint stage?
Whether you're crawling, running, sprinting, etc., is also, how you look at it, it gets a little subjective, right? But I'll take a step back and, say what Jeff Bezos always says, right? That Jeff Bezos says this for even a very established hundreds of billions of dollars market like, .com, that, it is still day 1 for the internet. Forget e-commerce, is still day 1 for the internet, right? So, and the numbers are there. Ye aisa hi slogan nahi hai. The numbers are there that, I am only 2 lakh sellers here. I mean, I'm very happy with the number. I'm only 2 lakh sellers, and there are millions of MSMEs out there, right? And my penetration is in the low percentages, though, and there's a lot of way to go there, right? So if I don't know how to tie back this to your metaphor, but I do hope that we continue to sprint as we continue to crawl, right? Because I think that is the day 1 sprint.
Absolutely, fantastic. I think whatever questions I had in my mind, thank you so much for answering all those questions patiently. But still, if my viewers have few more questions, I would request your team to even help there.
Absolutely, always. I think we're very enthused about the work that we do. One is, of course, the numbers of 20 billion, 80 billion, etc., etc. But we also genuinely believe that e-commerce exports and exports in general is actually good for India, right? It's good for the economic growth of India. It's actually good for Indians. And all the numbers apart, when you see things like, you've been like the seller that you launched is now a big name overseas, that's what makes you get out of bed. So yeah, very, very happy to engage. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
For taking
Thank you
out
for
time.
Pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. But like I said, I really enjoyed this entire conversation. I got answers to all my questions. But if you still have any questions on how to get started, what all are the necessary steps where you feel you would need a little bit more help on, their team will be more than happy to answer your queries. So please feel free to ask your questions in the comment section. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one. Till then, take care. Jai Hind and bye-bye.
You might have come across such advertisements on various social media platforms. Please note, all of these are fraudsters promising unbelievable returns through stock tips. I don't provide any calls or advisory services. I provide only educational content through my social media handles and through my website rachanaranade.com and rachanaranade.in.